but we are going to record today's webinar so that others who aren't able to join us can hear from Loni and from Tevis. Great. It looks like lots of people joining us. Halifax. Great. Good to see you. Shwanda, good to see you from the Rural Education Institute. Craven County. So we have Eastern North Carolina represented, well represented with us today, and maybe bracing for a little bit of winter weather, right? All right, and Duplin County too. Well, great. Great to have all of you all here today. See others from ECU. So it's great to have you. Um, so I mentioned ECU, Rural Education Institute, and I want to just share that they are one of our partners, a great partner in this work. And today you are joined by um, Dr. Loni Crumb, who is the Senior Research Associate at the Rural Education Institute at ECU. Loni is also the Associate Professor of Counseling Education Program and is a licensed clinical and mental health counselor. So we are so glad to have Loni here with us. And um, Loni is also joined by um, Dr. Tevis Harris. And Tevis is a national board certified teacher and a children's book author when things pass away. He is also, with all of that going on, an author and a principal at William R. Davie Middle School STEM Academy. And so we are so excited to have Loni and Tevis here. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to them and let them get us started.
Right.
All right. Oh, yes, I see some national partners too, as Loni's getting her screen shared there. I see
So
so
I
many.
think that we are ready to get this show on a roll. We have about 40 minutes here. So first, I'd like to start off by giving a personal narrative. What brings me to this work? As they shared, I am Dr. Loni Crumb, faculty at East Carolina University. But what brings me to this topic, attending to the mental health and wellness of rural schools administrators. I am a product of a rural area. I'm from Windsor, North Carolina, Bertie County, home of the best peanuts and people in the world. And just knowing the excellence and the opportunities that I had in my rural area, that's despite the limitations that we know are there because of geographic isolation or differences in socioeconomic statuses of the area. One thing that I do credit myself and my life, my environment for is an expectation of excellence. So what I have done, my life work is about rural prosperity, and I call it from Windsor to the world, really helping scholars, practitioners, and everyday people come and see the wealth and the resourcefulness and the creativity in rural areas, particularly about education, because that's one of the high points in rules. The schools or the schoolhouse is the basin for everything. It's the economic driver. And so what brings me to the work is being the change that I want to see in rural America and beyond. That's locally, regionally, statewide, and across the world. So it's an honor to be here, and particularly with the mental health component of it. If you know anything about mental health and specialty care area services in rural areas, they are very scant. So, from the lens as a child and now as a mental health practitioner, I see the need. I see when I walk in my role as a parent, and I see how hard my rural school educators and our leaders are working to take care of the children. And so it may not be the academic piece when I'm in my parent role, but I see that need, and the conversation that I have on the side with rural school staff really brings me here to this work today. So thank you. It's an honor to be able to talk to a group of people along with my co-presenter, Tevis Harris.
Well, I want to say good morning, good morning, good morning to everyone. I am Tevis Harris, and I am super excited about being here as well. So, my personal narrative is I come from a rural community where opportunity didn't always knock. You had to go looking for it. I grew up in the projects, in a place where resources were limited, expectations were often low, but not all the time. And survival sometimes took priority over dreams. In rural spaces like mine, struggle was quiet, pain was unspoken, and mental health that wasn't a conversation. It was something you carried alone. So education became, my way out. More importantly, it became my way back. And so today I serve as a school leader in rural communities that look a lot like the one that I was raised in. I now sit in rooms where decisions are made, y'all. But I never forgot the classrooms, the hallways, the homes, and the homes that shaped me. So I know firsthand the weight rural school administrators carry, leading schools with limited resources, wearing multiple hats, navigating trauma, isolation, and expectations to just keep going. So too often, we focus on the wellness of students and teachers. And you know what? And we should focus on those things, right? But we forget the administrators who are holding everything together. So rural leaders are resilient, y'all. We are resilient. But resilience without support leads to burnout. And that's why we're here today, right, Nancy and Lonnie? We're here today because
Yeah.
of that. And so my work, my leadership, and my advocacy are rooted in servant leadership, showing up, giving back, and making sure that those who serve our communities are seen, that they are supported, and that they are sustained. So this conversation and work, everybody, is personal for me because rural leaders are not an afterthought. We are essential. We are essential, and we deserve care too. So I want to take the opportunity to welcome everybody to this space and to this place at this time. And listen, you guys, we're gonna dig into a lot, and we just ask you to go along with us. Speak your piece, even if you're scared. And so we're gonna continue on, Lonnie. I think it's up to you now.
So we're seeing the slide. Why are we here? Retention and wellness, correct?
We're not
Actually,
seeing them,
Lana,
Lonnie.
yeah, we don't see the slides. If you would like me to share, I can do that if that's helpful. Oh, now we see it.
All right. Asking you shall receive. Awesome. So again, just setting the tone as a reminder, why are we here? Why are we doing this workshop? Rural schools administrator juggle many roles. If you've been in a rural school, it is just so obvious. So supporting, we are here for retention and wellness purposes and those along with for this hour. Supporting staff and students, responding to the community needs, meeting accountability expectations that we have from our kids, the state level, the federal level, the family levels, and even our own families and who we are, and navigating the mental health challenges as I see as a mental health researcher that are there and that is growing. So I see this data and I have to do something about the data that I see. So that brings us to you, retaining our excellent personnel in rural areas, but not only keep them there, keeping them well. We keep like changing that narrative about rural areas. That's exactly the reasons why Dr. Harris and I felt the need to work with the collaborative on this workshop. So just to start, I want to park this data right here that is just always very starking to me. And this is recent data as of, I think it's 2024. And Dr. Harris and I like to anchor our things in the data. We'll get to practice, but we have to show you what the data looks like. So just take a look at that for a minute. This is educator and personnel rates of anxiety and stress before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So you will notice everyone's stress level, anxiety and stress. And those are two diagnoses that have just skyrocketed since COVID-19, and we have not seen a decline in there. That's across the board, that's across professions, but particularly we're looking at educators and rural educators. But that has went up with the teachers, 69% versus pre-COVID, 41%. 65% versus 34% pre-COVID with school psychologists, school social workers, and the counselors. And Dr. Harris says big questions on why why are we the people stressed? And there's a reason for that that we'll get to. The staff going from 48% stress and anxiety to 70%. You all, that's a lot. That's a grave amount. And even with our administrators going from 19% pre-COVID to 39%. So this data is striking. And particularly what we want to do is couch this in the context of ruralness, of rurality. And here are the things that I think about from my mental health lens. Occupational stress. Usually the practitioners or the personnel in rural areas, there aren't a lot of us, particularly with school counselors and school social workers. There are some places that still float these professionals around. It's very hard for us to find supervision and group supervision so we can process really hard cases with another professional. For our rural superintendents and our rural school leaders, sometimes we're so far from each other. The counties can be right beside each other, but they can still be so far. And I always remind everyone, this is occupational stress, but what about your personal stress? What about the personal stuff that's going on? Some of us have kids in college. Some of us are dealing with deep grief and death, along with the work stuff going on, separation, divorce, kids with special needs. This is outside a very stressful or constraining work environment. One thing that I love, and we don't get the solutions, but I'm a very solutions focused person, always remind kids, adults, when you go to school, they have lives too. Chill out a little bit. Chill out a little bit. Give them a break. And it's a 1 versus 30, not 1v1, because sometimes you got to talk like the kids learn. I said, it's you, them against the classroom. It's them against the school sometimes. So be nice, be kind. But all of this contributes to that heightened anxiety stress, and particularly in our rural areas. So that occupational stress, compassion fatigue, we all know the term burnout, but compassion fatigue is something else too when it comes to a leader, not really executing what you know or what you've been taught, but that compassion fatigue, getting tired of seeing the same things over and over and not having a solution for them readily and available. Your own mental distress and illness. We're talking about that personal life things that are going on. Low self-efficacy is something we need to pay attention to. Question when you start to question decisions that you're making, right? And you know that you're excellent. You know that you have had PD and training. But when you come back to application, you start questioning if this is going to work. Who was on my side? This is a lot to carry on a daily basis. Disengagement from whatever that may be, and we'll sort of talk about that in our breakout sessions. Compromise resilience, knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for, but that being compromised because of some factors that happen in the school or in the community ongoing. So that's called compromise resilience. And then this can also lead to career dissatisfaction, which we don't want to hear with our educators. We need rural teachers. We need rural leaders. But when I work with new teachers in rural areas, year one, and this was just last year, and they're telling me they're burned out. And I'm like, wait a minute, you just got there. You just literally got there. We can't claim that label. But hearing burnout with new teachers, that's not what we want to hear. And so these are some of the things, and along with increased workload and workplace pressures in rural settings, that really lead to that heightened stress and anxiety. And the reason why we welcome this collective conversation today, to really get into some of this and talk about some solutions and be honest. So we're going to have a really honest conversation here. I think some of the best experts, Tevis Harris and I, that are in the schools, we're in the trenches, and we can be that voice to help us find some solutions to continue to move from it, to go towards excellence.
So thank you, Loni, for sharing that information. And everyone here, we will talk about violence and aggression against educators. We want to talk about what we're really seeing. And so when we talk about school violence, we often picture students fighting or external threats, but we don't talk enough about the violence directed at educators, especially administrators. And I want to be very clear, violence, y'all, doesn't always leave bruises. Sometimes it leaves exhaustion, it leaves fear, it leaves silence. And just as Loni just explained, it also leaves burnout. So I want to ground our conversation in the data that you're seeing on the screen from APA. And I want us to notice some things. So during COVID restrictions, the rates of verbal, threatening, and physical aggression went down. Do y'all see that? Once restrictions lifted, they didn't just return, they surged. Teachers experienced the sharpest rise, but administrators consistently report high baseline exposure. And so, what I take from this data is that COVID didn't create aggression, it interrupted it, right? And when schools reopened, everything that was suppressed came rushing back. It came back like a flood. And so, with that being said, I want to name some of the behaviors that we have normalized. And basically, let's name what aggression actually looks like in schools today. And you guys may even have even more, but I'm going to name a couple. Intimidation. We get threatening emails. And how many of us have heard this before? I'll take this to the board. And what about this one? I know people downtown. Yeah, we've all heard that before. What about the public humiliation? Social media call outs. Oh my God, social media is horrible. The recorded conversations. Now parents are walking in with their phones out and recording conversations. And what about the group texts and community pages targeting educators? And then the last thing that I want to mention is bullying. Yes, the bullying of adults. Repeated complaints meant to wear leaders down, discrediting expertise, and then also undermining authority in front of students and staff. And here's the thing, we've become so used to this behavior that we don't always call it what it is. It's violence. It's violence. Would you all agree? You can just shake your head. Yeah, it's violence.
I also want to
It's
see some likes because with my parent lens, I some of this stuff I have been guilty of, some not. But will I take this to the board? Probably something I've said before. But if you have heard some of these before as a practitioner, please hit the like button, put up your finger because this is a dialogue and we were going off practice and I would just love to see from the audience some reaction to some of these things, especially the social media going there and that voice carrying when they don't know actually what happened in the school day and all the precipitating factors that led to that decision being made from the leaders.
absolutely, Lane. And so right here, I want to shift the conversation to discuss the move from pandemic policies to present day tension with this same data. And so I want to kind of connect grade inflation, learning gaps, and aggression, if you will. So during the pandemic, we made compassionate decisions, right? And don't get me wrong, we needed to make those decisions. We made the decision to provide grace in grading, right? We made flexible deadlines decisions. We did promotion over retention. And then I remember this specifically, telling kids, do the best you can. It became the norm, right? And I want to be sure to say this carefully and clearly. But compassion without recalibration creates confusion. Compassion without recalibration creates confusion. So, grade inflation masks learning loss. Students return with credits, but not mastery. Yeah. Families now see grades that don't match performance. And here's the last thing, teachers enforce standards again, and we become the target. So we are now visible proof of gaps, that were once hidden. And we all know that visibility creates tension, which leads me to why administrators are especially vulnerable here. We as administrators, we absorb conflict from every single direction. And we also enforce policies that we didn't create. We also defend standards in emotionally charged spaces. And then we're also expected to be calm, available, and resilient always. And in rural schools, especially, administrators don't just work in the community, we live in the community. And I just want to say is there is no anonymity, there's no separation, and very little recovery time. And so here I want to do some reflection. And Lonnie, we can engage here. And I want to ask you something, and you don't necessarily have to answer it. I just want to ask, at what point does parent advocacy become intimidation? When does accountability cross into public humiliation? And my final ask or question would be, who is caring for the mental health of the people holding the system together? And Beth, I see you shaking your head, Beth. And here's the thing, if we don't attend to the wellness of rural school administrators, we don't just lose leaders, y'all. We destabilize entire communities. And that's exactly why this conversation is so important. I have some other thoughts that I want to share that I really wasn't going to say unless I needed to say them, but I want to share this. Burnout is not a personal failure, y'all. It's a systems warning. Aggression, aggression increases when expectations rise, but support doesn't, right? And then resilience should never replace responsibility. And then the final thought that I had written down is silence. This is really important for me. Silence doesn't mean safety. It often means survival, which is going to take us to um, our next slide, and we turn to turnover in rural education leadership. So I want to know who's still standing. Go ahead and raise your hand. If you're still standing, raise your hand. And so here's the thing about this. When we talk about turnover, Dr. Artist, you there? When we talk about turnover, we usually ask this question: why are people leaving? But Teresa, the more important question is, what are we asking people to stay inside of? Would you all agree to that? That's the more important question. And so again, I want to anchor it in the data, everybody. When we're looking at this data, and as I'm looking at the data myself, teachers show the highest intentions to transfer or quit. But I want to say this: administrators approach 30 to 37% quit intentions post-COVID. And mental health professionals, I know that there's some mental health professionals up here now, mental health professionals approach 39%. And so, everybody, this is not a fringe issue. This is a systemic strain. And so, when the people trained to support mental health want to leave, that's not an individual issue. I believe that that's a warning signal. And what I've come to is that rural leadership equals amplified pressure. And this is specifically rural. Turnover looks different in rural communities. And we all know this because there are fewer replacements, there is a smaller applicant pool. And as a leader myself, we wear every hat: instructional leader, disciplinarian, counselor, crisis responder. And like Pastor Shirley Caesar says it, you name it, we wear it all. And also, the other part of it is we have limited access to external support. In rural schools, when a leader leaves, there isn't a bench, there's a gap. And so I want to talk about the hidden drivers of leadership exit. And so here's what I believe people feel, but they don't say out loud. And again, right here, I want to see you shake your head if I'm telling the truth, okay? Or if you feel the same way. Here's what I believe people feel but don't say out loud. I see James Knight in the room and Dr. Aiden Harris in the room. Listen, moral fatigue, constantly choosing between what's right and what's possible. The second thing is visibility without protection. Every decision you make is made public. Every mistake is amplified. Emotional labor without recovery time. It's crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis, and no real decompression time. Beth, am I right? I see you nodding your head again, Beth. Responsibility without authority is the final thing that I think people feel but don't say out loud. We are enforcing policies we didn't design. And the last thing is managing expectations that we can't control. And so people aren't leaving because they don't care. They're leaving because they care too much for too long with too little support. COVID didn't start it, it just exposed it. COVID didn't cause the leadership crisis, it merely exposed the fragility of the system. So, pandemic grace turned into permanent strain. Learning gaps widened. Behavioral needs increased. Public trust eroded. It went out the door. And leaders became the shock absorbers of the system. And so rural administrators became the bridge between compassion and accountability. And that bridge, that very same bridge, is cracking. And the consequence we don't talk about is that leadership instability disrupts it disrupts school culture, it disrupts teacher retention, it disrupts student outcomes, and it disrupts community trust. And so with this, I want to ask, what does consistency look like for students when leadership is constantly in survival mode? What happens, everyone, to school improvement when leaders are planning exit strategies instead of long-term vision? And I'll leave you with this. Turnover isn't just about who leaves. It's about what communities lose when leaders can't stay well enough to lead. And believe it or not, y'all, retention is a wellness issue. It's not a loyalty issue. And we can't keep asking leaders to be resilient in systems that aren't humane. And stability simply requires sustainability. And sustainability requires care.
So thank you, Dr. Harris, for that wonderful practical overview of what we're seeing in schools every day. And just looking at the people with their camera on, seeing the nods, seeing the claps, I am most sure that these words do not fall on deaf ears. I mean, if you've been human, you've been in a real school, and we're on this call, we've seen these things daily and weekly. And sometimes being the, I see unicorns and rainbows. So there may be crisis and crisis, but in these rural schools, when I'm a parent or when I go out there in my faculty capacity, there are also wins, wins, and wins. But you know, when that cloud is over, you can't see the sun and everything that is going on. You can't see the little things. So we're going to cut into two small groups now, and we're going to really tackle this last slide about transfer intentions. And we're going to create an antithesis about how we can know thyself, know our leadership mentality and capacity, and really share what success stories in this community of practice we can take from each other. It delighted me to see all of the counties. I'm an Eastern North Carolina person, but to see all the several Eastern North Carolina counties, as well as the Central and the West, come together, because we all want to be retained and we all want to be well. And so we're going to break out in two separate breakout rooms, one with Dr. Harris and one with myself. and really going to deep dive into some leadership capacity, share some step stories to try to alter some of this data and shift some of this data in the rural literature that we presented with you all today. So I
To my folk, now we're back into the main.
No.
Welcome
You
back.
thought, where's
Surprise.
that?
Didn't have enough time.
No. Well, good news. What we have planned for right now is a little bit of share out. And so, Dr. Harris, if you want to get that started, you can get it started from the lens of your room.
Yeah, so from the lens of our room, we had a lot of conversation about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And one of the things that Dr. Artis shared with us is that he's now trying to work himself out of those things into what he calls formulate. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, formulate. Ah, that works. So now what he says is that, you know, instead of responding in those stress responses, how do we formulate a plan? And in formulating that plan, how do we bring everyone to the table to help fix the issues, to help fix the things that are happening around us? And I think that that's brilliant. And we got to our success exchange, and I can't remember exactly who was talking, but she said some wonderful things. Can the person that was talking during our success exchange share what you just said again?
Dr. Harris, it might have been what I just said. If
Yes,
it
Rosenbaum.
was
Yes, Dr.
Sure.
Rosenbaum. Yes.
Sure. I was just sharing, you were asking how can districts support leaders in helping to them not have to have some of these responses. And I just think it always comes back to the district feeling, giving leaders the autonomy and the trust to lead in their
Yes.
buildings and assuming the best of intent in their leaders. You know, if you've chosen me to be your principal, then you've chosen me to always do my best for my people. And so just having that trust from your central office and your community allows you to do your best job without feeling like you're questioned all the time, which adds to all of those feelings of fight, flight, and freeze.
All right, everybody give her some snaps. That was so hot. Clock it, clock it, clock it. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenbaum. All right, Dr. Crumb, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I would say, I think the beauty of just this synergy of thinking that in our group, knowing thyself and knowing how that important that is, but pulling that formulate. Group members, wouldn't you say that there were a lot of times, it depended on the situation and how they were, but we needed that time to freeze, run away, or but then come back and formulate because we still have to do a job. A decision still has to be made. The school day still has to go on. So I love that even from this hour we spent together, we're going to throw in formulate moving forward, Tevis, when we do this.
I told him I was stealing it and he can't take it.
We're taking it where we can collectively take away formulate, okay?
Hey, but Lonnie, can I share one more thing before we end? So one of the questions that I asked our group is, where do you want to be? And guess what the top response was?
Where?
Everybody wanted to be a fighter. And I said, you guys, y'all do know that that's stressful, right?
Yeah, that's too stressful.
It is stressful. But that was interesting too, because people wanted to stand firm in what they believed. And going back to what Dr. Rosenbaum said, we wanted to be able to lead the school the way we need to lead the school. And the standard is here. We're not lowering our standards for lowering our standards. You got to get to where we're setting the bar, right? And so I appreciate that.
So I know this may have felt short, but it was meant to be just a community conversation with a topic that we saw the need for. We are going to turn it over to our wonderful organizers, Teresa and Nancy, with the Rural Schools Collaborative. First, we want to thank you for bringing together voices from across the state for this 1 hour. It took a lot of planning, but I think that we have had a lot of success just broaching this conversation. So we're going to turn first. I want to say thank you again to all of our participants for sharing this hour of your day. And hopefully there have been, please practice one single takeaway. from what you've heard this conversation today. Don't let it just be an absent time, but let it be a learning opportunity, a learning moment, and then talk to somebody else about it. Even when you get home, your spouse or your pet. I believe the pet parents. Talk to your cat. Some of these things. Thank you again. It's been an honor to spend this time with you. I turn it over to the organizers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Crumb. We appreciate everybody for joining us for this time. We do have a follow-up survey. Nancy just dropped it into the chat for you. We want to know, Dr. Crumb and Dr. Harris have very generously offered to do a follow-up session if that is what is requested in the follow-up survey. We also want to know what other needs you have. We intend to continue hosting these sessions for folks to come together, learn a little bit, and share with each other, to share the volume of great things happening across our state and our rural districts. So we'd appreciate if you would just take a couple of minutes to do that. I know you're all leaders and you might be jumping to your next meeting, and so we will also include that link in our follow-up email for you. And then oops, sorry, wrong link. If you would like to keep track of what's going on with the collaborative, we do have a newsletter. We send it monthly. If you want to sign up for that, go ahead and click that link. And just scroll down to the bottom of that page and drop your email address in, and you will continue to get information on what we have coming up. And finally, we really want to just express our great appreciation for Dr. Crumb and Dr. Harris for joining us and leading this session today. Such an important topic, and wonderful to kind of see you lead and bring all of the richness of the group that joined us today out. And so with that, we are done with our session. I will stop the recording and just want to thank you all.